Hello and welcome once again to Kritfayle. Tonight you are here with me, Scuzball, and I am accompanied with the magic, awesome, wonderful
Ghost.
Yep, that's right, because he's not always there.
Nope.
Anyways, tonight, jeez, it's crazy being on two different sides of the planet. We are going to be talking about the Force and Destiny book. So, in a nutshell, we decided collectively that all three books, Force and Destiny, Age of the Empire, and Age of Rebellion.
Age of Rebellion. Wait, no. Age of the Empire, Age of Rebellion.
Edge of the Empire, Age of Rebellion, so you get it. Don't confuse me. It's too late in the afternoon. It's too early in the late afternoon. It's going... They're really good. Really good rule sets, isn't it?
Yeah, they're spectacular. The best RPG version of Star Wars ever.
However, we have found one problem, if the only problem. That is with the... what was it?
Force rules.
Yeah, Force rules. Pretty much they're just too heavily mechanicalized, isn't it?
Yeah, that's my overall feeling. Overall, one thing I have fallen in love with, not just do I think these are the best Star Wars RPG rules, I think they're the best RPG rules ever. I think they finally found that mix between mechanics and storytelling. Like,
Yeah.
freeformers, yeah, so freeformers don't like dice because they feel that dice get in the way of telling a story. Whereas I've definitely been on the side of dice. It gives a random element that isn't preordained like a freeform game. To me, a freeform game, and this is not meant to insult anybody, but a freeform game to me is more a strict, straight-out exercise in narrative. To me, it's not a role-playing game. That's a personal opinion only. I'm not telling you what you're doing's wrong if you dig it, okay? I don't want anyone thinking that.
I am a big fan of freeform, just letting people know. So, yeah, we're not biased here at Kritfayle.
No.
Anyways, go on.
But I think that this set of rules really hits the perfect medium between the two, because it's not a success or fail dice. It's not like you have to hit 16 for their armor class, and if it's above that, it's a hit. If it's below that, it's a miss. It doesn't do that. It doesn't work like that. They're narrative dice. There is success and failures, but I've seen people literally use every dice up in a narrative. They didn't just sit there and cancel out success, failure, they get taken care of. I've seen people take the success and explain it, and then take the failure and explain it, and work through every dice they rolled. There's that random element that the RPGers love, but it's pushing the narrative, which is more freeforming in a way. And I think that it's a dead set perfect balance between the two. It's still definitely a dice role-playing game, but it's a dice role-playing game that pushes narrative and pushes ideas. When you found that homing beacon, as an example, normally it would have been, what's the success to pull it out? This or that. You either succeed or fail. What did you get?
I got a fail. Oh no, a success but a threat.
That's right. You got a success but a threat. So you succeeded in removing it safely from the ship, but you turned it on. That's the brilliance of this sort of rule set, that you can do that. Or you could have done the opposite. You could have failed, but had a triumph in some,
Yeah.
So it's really brilliant for that, and it's been that way since the first book. The problem I have is the Force rules, because the Force rules, it feels mechanical. It feels like way back when West End Games first did D6, and I really liked that system. I thought they did a great game, and the fact that they have stuff they worked on appearing today in other places. Fantasy Flight's Armada game, there's an officer in there called Ardar Talon. He featured in Tatooine Manhunt, an adventure way back when, released for West End Games. In the last episode of Rebels, which was the B-Wing, the birth of the B-Wing, at the very end of the episode, the designer said, "It's great to see Project Shantipole continue." There was a West End Games adventure about the birth of the B-Wing called Project Shantipole. So the fact that so much of what they did survives today in now considered canon is such a huge testament. But they had still this clunky sort of magic-based system for for the Force.
And that's sort of what it feels like.
Well, yeah, kinda. That's the thing. It's almost like every game, Star Wars game, when it got to the Force, they treat it sort of like spells. You can do so many of this sort of level spell per day, and so many of this level, and that's how they sort of did the Force. And that's not how the Force is in the shows and the movies. It's always on tap. They can always just use it. And everything about these games have been so fluid. It doesn't bog down in rules. You make your roll and you're straight into narrative. But the Force has adopted, for the first time in this new version, the new system. This is the first time I've looked at something and went, this is old school and I don't like it. This is the one thing where it's like, it seems they got worried about balance. It seems they got worried about how it all was going to go together compared to non-Jedi users or something like this. I don't know. It's very expensive as well. If you want to be a Jedi, you're spending a lot of extra points in things that I don't think you need. Or not so much you don't need, but it shouldn't be that way in my opinion.
Yeah. It seems like it's a bit either overthought or underthought. Like you said, they're trying to play the balance trick with it. And I think you were right what you said to me before, that they were trying to nerf the Jedis so you can play alongside with other characters and not make them too overbroken. Sort of like that. And they're sort of not, because as you put more points into these characters, they become very powerful. So, but that's it. That's what it is. It's you're putting more points into them to making more powerful. It's as opposed to what it used to be, where your character becomes more adept and more able. It is like Pathfinder and D&D, where you're leveling up and getting stronger arbitrarily in static numbers, sort of thing. So, yeah, it's not fluid anymore.
Yes, absolutely.
It's yeah, like you said, it's clunky.
But I think there's ways to. You don't have to nerf Jedi. There's ways to balance that stuff out automatically without having to worry about, these sort of things. That's what surprised me when I saw it. I expected it to be much more just simple and easy, and it's not. It's you not only do you have to buy different Force disciplines, but you also then have to buy abilities within those Force disciplines, and they're not groupings. They're like heal. Like if you wanted to do heal, if you wanted to be like there was a series of the novels they did like I didn't read them, but they were on a sort of a medic sort of thing using the Force to heal. They've got that, but to do it, you have to get the heal harm basic power, and then you've got to do. If you really want to be good in it, you've got to buy extra ones as you go. If you want to bring your lightsaber to your telekinesis, that's a different Force grouping. If you want to do Force leap, that's enhancement. So you've got to buy a different Force grouping, and then if you want to jump vertical, not just horizontal, you've got to buy that ability. It just seems clunky and min-maxing, and normally when you make one of these characters, it's really the character that drives the choices. I mean, yeah, you look at your skills and you look at the abilities and you do just have, obviously conscious thinking about what will be best for your character. But I find when I make a character, a lot of it's this is where I'm going with my character, and then you find the stuff to match. The Force stuff feels the opposite. Force stuff actually feels like I'm having to consider rules over characteristics.
You're sitting down and planning your character, like you would if you were playing World of Warcraft or something like that.
But yeah, not from a narrative point of view, but from the rule point of view, and I don't like that. That goes against the way these games have been going.
It would be, with the leveling out, I think what you said before was interesting, where you said that it would be better if, instead of having rules to make it even out, do it narratively. In pretty much most things, not just Star Wars, where a lot of cases, when you've got a major force on the same, let's say, battlefield, with smaller forces, a good instance, what was that Star Wars one you had with Luke and...
Yeah, well, I mean, in the first film, Luke was still very much learning. He wasn't really a Jedi in any way yet. So he totally operated with Han and Leia and that. They stormed the Death Star. He flew with the other pilots. He'd learned a lot more. He'd become more powerful by Empire. He fought Vader, while the rest of them were fighting stormtroopers. Return of the Jedi, they're on Endor. Lando's in space. Luke's facing Vader. For the prequels, you had... Look at the Darth Maul fight. The door opens... Darth Maul would cut Padme into tiny little pieces. But what happens? The two Jedi go, we'll handle this. They fight Darth Maul, and Padme and her security team and that fight droids for that fight. That's how they did the balance. That's how they never put Padme versus Darth Maul. They didn't do it. They always separated them. And that's sort of like I picture the RPG. Now, they are, as you said, all completely compatible. And you could take a Jedi and put it in Edge of the Empire. And you would have that Obi-Wan Kenobi, Luke Skywalker on Tatooine kind of deal. You can do that. But when I look at these books, really I feel there's only a certain amount of crossover that's designed from Force and Destiny. Not so much the other two, as we've already seen. When we've done Starfall, I actually was doing Starfall as an Age of Rebellion adventure. That's actually meant to be our Age of Rebellion campaign that I'm doing, because... your other character, your Gungan, is actually the Edge of the Empire one. But you both made forms of colonists, which is Edge of the Empire. So you took Edge of the Empire characters and superimposed them into Age of Rebellion. It worked very well. That you can do. Force and Destiny, though, when I look at it, it feels much more contained. It feels much more like, if we're going to play Force and Destiny, you're all going to be out of this rulebook. You don't have to be. You don't have to be, though. But
I don't know. It actually said in one of the texts, if you want to play in Age of Rebellion or in Edge of the Empire, it is advised that you take a character from the Force sensitive list.
yeah, see? So that's kind of...
yeah.
They're kind of there, see? So they're sort of saying, if you want to be a Jedi, be a Jedi. Do a Jedi game. Have all of you as Jedi. If you want to do the other stuff, do the other stuff. But don't... So I think that they're sort of imposing their own form of balance, and that's why I don't understand the way they've made this other stuff so clunky. I mean, that was the point of Jedi, though. That's the thing. It's like Jedi were kind of Superman in a way. Not completely, but they were in a way. I mean, they could deflect laser bolts. They could force push. They could telekinesis. They could tell you these weren't the droids you're looking for. That was who they were. So, utilizing them in different ways, cleverly, is key if you're going to put them in other areas. But I really feel that
You don't really have to use them cleverly. You can always just you use them narratively. Yeah, it's you make the narrative to suit. If it's a Jedi among other characters that are not Jedi, then the narrative would be this group using each other's talents to overcome a certain situation. It's a perfect example, because with every group there's diversity. Even in Star Wars, no character is perfect and can do everything, and that includes the Jedi. Just because they're Jedi doesn't mean they're going to fly very well. So you still have that need for other characters, and you can use it narratively.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Obi-Wan Kenobi often described himself as hating flying. He wasn't always a good pilot. I think that you do see, though, if you want to look at canon as a way of the sort of thought structure, and I'm not a huge fan of canon. I hate being excessively canonized about things, but Jango Fett goes against Mace Windu. You had a Force-using Jedi and a bounty hunter. And he lands there, and I think that Jango did some pretty dumbass things, and he kind of asked to get killed in a way. But basically, he goes pa-chung, 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 and Mace runs at him, deflecting those bolts till he gets close enough, and he just chops off his fucking head. And I thought that very much showed that even a qualified bounty hunter is kind of in trouble against the Jedi, unless he's smart. Now, the fight he had with Obi-Wan Kenobi, in that instance, both him and Obi-Wan were equals. Both of them were in trouble all the way through that fight. But typically, the non-Jedis were at a massive disadvantage anytime they did that. So,
I mean, that's the thing. The bounty hunters knew that. They came to cunning. You saw that a lot in the animated series, where the bounty hunters were a formidable force against the Jedi, as were the pirates. And when I think about it, Mace Windu killing Boba Fett, well, Mace Windu is a very powerful Jedi. Whoever you are, you would be pretty scared to go against him.
Yes, he was a master, so yeah, definitely.
He was a Jedi master, probably he's second to Yoda. So, yeah, he's going to kick Boba Fett's ass. Obi-Wan and Anakin and the lower ranking ones, of course, Boba Fett would probably beat them.
Yes, if he was smart, yeah, that's the thing.
And that's what he would do. He would use his smarts. So there would be a balance to that, where the Jedi use the Force, a bounty hunter use their wits. So yeah.
So I do think they totally can be used, but I think that they really do want you to be separate, though, for some of this. And that's its own balancing factor. So I'm surprised that it's so clunky, especially like Force Jump. To get Force Jump at its maximum is 45 points. That's a lot of points just to be able to do a Force Jump.
Spend 1 dark or light to heal a number of wounds equal to intellect from engaged living creature. And that's the other thing that you had with, is that you roll a Force dice and you create a pool of light or dark Force to use.
Well, actually, reading the other bit, it said if you get dark side, it counts as out light. At rank 1, you roll 1 die. And if you get any dark side, you get no power then. The only way to do it is to choose dark side, which you're allowed to automatically choose. But if you roll any dark side with a rank 1, you had no power. And my problem I have with this is, okay, they've kept that part of it the same as the regular system, which I guess is what they're thinking. Light cancels dark, dark cancels light. So if you roll 2 dice, you could come up with a positive after cancelling stuff out. But still, this is on top of other things, and it says, like for some of the skills, it says add this to your other skill. And that's part of my other problem, is the fact that you're now, this is where it's becoming really mechanical. You're doing an extra die roll, adding it to something else and then rolling that. It's going to slow down the narrative, and that's not what this game does. The game never slows down in its narrative the way the rules are the first time. The rules add to the narrative. They encourage you, the player, to be creative with what you've just freaking rolled and not just be success or failure. But the Force rules feel the opposite. They feel like we have to stop, add stuff, subtract stuff, sort of mix this together, then you make your roll. And it's expensive. Between the expense and the fact that it's getting in the way, it just doesn't feel as smooth as everything else that they've done.
It really is like magic. It's just another layer on top of, instead of just being innate. It should be innate. It should be something that you just use, and you don't think twice about it.
Exactly, because they don't. I mean, okay, you see Luke having to concentrate when he was learning in Empire to pull the lightsaber from the ice to him, and he couldn't lift the X-Wing because he didn't believe. But other than those sort of moments, you see, typically they just grab it when they want. Like, even in his fight with Vader, when he sort of started to get confident, he just snapped out his hand and pulled that lightsaber to him. He just did his Force leaps. He just did everything until he screwed up and had his hand cut off. He was doing pretty good. But look at all the way through the prequels. they just whipped stuff constantly. When they needed to pull the force, they just did it. There was never a moment that it felt like they couldn't tap into it.
Moving things, manipulating things.
Yep.
It's
constant.
You see it so many times. Little kids doing it. They just move objects like it's nothing.
But if you roll this dice and you come up with a dark side at rank 1, you're not going to be able to do it. It's not going to be like the fact that, oh, it didn't succeed. It's you didn't actually do it. Now, okay, they might say rank 1's low level. Okay, I can see where they're coming from that, but
You still can do some stuff.
But that's the thing, you still, every time you do something, you're still going to be relying on that. Even if it's like something, you've got 2 stormtroopers and you're dressed as a stormtrooper, they've got no reason to doubt you, you walk up and you're using the force just to say, I'm going to go to maintenance. You could roll the dice then, even though you've got sort of a lot of advantages in the fact that they're not really going to be thinking what you're asking is bad. So it's sort of adding to your persuasion. You're still rolling that 1 dice and coming up with nothing. And that's where I'm sort of like, yeah, not sure that's. I mean, I'm not saying it should be all powerful.
No, it's not about power. It's not. We've sort of moved away from balance, and it's more into the zone of it's not the nature and the spirit of the game, of the system itself.
Oh, it just doesn't feel the nature of the spirit of the Jedi or the Force.
Yeah, that. Oh yeah, you're calling him out on that one, aren't you? Damn you, Fantasy Flight games.
But we do love Fantasy Flight. I think most of the games I've really enjoyed in the last 2 years come from FFG. So I mean, I am a big fan of what they do. And they've just they bought the rights to Legend of the Five Rings, which was also one of my favourite RPGs, Samurai and all that. So yes, very cool. I'm looking forward to that. Great. So this isn't an FFG bash. I mean, I love the Star Wars game. I think it's great. But I do think they've got clunky on the Force rules.
Yeah, we're being critical.
Yep.
Nothing is perfect. Nope. And we are not afraid to share what our thoughts are. So yeah, that's pretty much what we feel for the mechanics. And maybe they might address it. I don't think so.
No, it's already done. They're not going to change. This is the core rulebook.
Yeah. That's the core.
But character classes, love them. Like the specializations and that they've got in this book. Fantastic. I'm impressed with the way they did this. You could make an Old Republic game based on this. I'd love to see them release a source book, a big one on Old Republic, to try, and stuff like that could tie into Force and Destiny. But this book has great character classes to work from. I mean, the rest of the book is fantastic.
It is, except for the talent trees. That's all right. They're good. They could do a little bit of bits. Actually, no, that's just my thing with the talent trees. I've always thought them a little bit too expensive for me.
I do feel that there's not a lot of character points sometimes. Like when they say you can't raise any ability over 6, and I'm like, good God, you only have 100 points to spend. You couldn't do that. Like, even if there was no rules in place to stop your character creation of going too high, you just can't. Like, it's real quick to run out of points.
Yeah. It is. So I actually want to lead on to the second part of this, which I was thinking, which was our ideas to make this better. Our suggestions and what we were going to do to improve and modify the rule set, make them a little bit more usable, user-friendly to us, of course. So, Ghost had a good idea with adding, what was it, boost?
Yeah, I was more thinking of just adding boost dice to existing skills. I mean, I'm still trying to think about it. I mean, because I haven't yet tested a lot of this before going full on, but yeah, I'm sort of leaning towards the idea of, if you're doing persuasion and doing force persuasion, using your persuasion skill, a usual test against your opponent, and adding a boost die for the force, adding as an influence. Force jump, tying it to
Yeah.
your athletics. You know, you want to do athletics, you're going to use that as your base. And allowing the force actually giving you the distance to do the jump, but also the boost dice to help with the target number.
Just on that one, because my mic went to booge, I was asking about the force power trees and each individual power on them. So bind, force C, heal, harm, misdirect. So they don't they do and don't use them? Or is it just because it's
No, they do.
specific?
No, we do. They do. No, we see them. But I don't like the way it's handled. I mean, like, there was a series of books where they were doing medic, which is the heal. There's ones we see all the time, which is the force jump. Yeah, which is enhanced. Yes, we see them, but it doesn't feel like it's so compartmentalized in the actual movies as it does here.
Would it be... Would it be a better idea to have those 11 skills as a separate skill list? So you have your standard skills, acrobatics, computer, cool, that's all that, and you got a skill list, force power tree, your force power tree skills that fall under a new characteristic called force.
Maybe. I mean, it's hard. I haven't really sat down and given enough thought yet to completely how I should fix this. I've got some testing to do for sure.
Yeah, I'm testing this way, and I see as though maybe they might be a bit afraid to use this. They tried to make the force different, like the other ones, but I'm starting to think, well, no, not. Let's not separate the force from the other skills. Let's make them exactly the same, using the force the same as any other skill, because that essentially is. Or even better, maybe the force are easier to use. So, say you've got your 11 different skills, you put points in them as you would buying a different skill.
Yeah.
And by doing that, you raise the level at which you can manipulate that particular skill better overall, not having to put points into range, duration, and the total cost of the skill is like 10, 15. It's like 5 to purchase a skill, and then you pay 10 and 20 and whatnot. So it's a lot cheaper. As well as that, it's more general. The skills are more general, and do away with the force dice completely. The only time you'd ever use it would be at the start, determining how many destiny points you have.
Yep.
Using instead either...
See, I like the destiny point idea, but the idea for me for the destiny points is it's that you get 1 or 2 sort of key times where you could suddenly spend one of these and do a really cool thing. That I like, but that shouldn't be your basis for the force kind of thing.
Yeah, so it would be better to have the force... having it running parallel with your skills, whether or not you have a separate experience points to that, so you gain general experience and then force experience based on not only the amount of times you use the force, but your connection with the force. So how much you are aligned to the light side or dark side determines how much your force increases by. And from there you can upgrade your skills from that. And having higher skills allows you to use more boost die or certain things with the checks, or you would roll against the skill specifically if you needed to.
Okay.
So, essentially it is another skill list. Now what we've been using, especially in my games, is the skills are more a representation of your ability. So I don't necessarily ask you to roll to use a skill. I will just say, okay, your skill, you have, say, 3 in computing. This computer is relatively easy, maybe 2 purple. I won't ask you to roll because you're more than likely going to get it, and the consequences for failing or not failing are relatively minor. So for the purpose of narrative, you just hack it, not slow it down. That principle could apply to using the Force, where the ratings that you have per skill just makes it easier for you to do stuff.
Okay.
When you apply the Force, say to jump, if you have a high rating in your move tree, or your move skill, then if you needed to clear a massive ledge, you can do it. If you had to clear a massive ledge and it was a really, really far ledge and you don't have very much skills, then you'd have to roll a test for it. And it would be as simple as you roll against that particular Force move. It's sort of like...
Okay.
Do we do it that way? Or do we add it to the original skills themselves? Because it's just there's some crossover skills, like your Force jump, your like healing and stuff like that. These are skills that cross over with your normal skills, isn't it?
Yes, definitely.
So you could just add a boost die.
Which is sort of where I'm sort of leaning.
Okay.
That's the way I'm sort of leaning at the moment.
But for things like Force C, enhanced or point, battle meditation, not so much influence, misdirect, these things where they are specific only to Jedi, you would need some way of showing that.
Mm-hmm.
So that would be where I'd say to start off with having the extra characteristic of Force that you put points into, separate to your character build, and then from there the derived attributes will be these skills, and you can put points into those ones depending on how much you have in your pool, so your Force pool, and then you roll against them in the game as you normally would any other power. In the sense that, say you had to do a very complex 4C to see a certain location of a Jedi in a system that's a few systems away. That's specific to Jedi, and it would require a lot of concentration, and there's a possibility of failing. So you could roll on that.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, that would give you an element of chance.
Yes.
And you would level up your Force rating, I believe, would increase over time, as opposed to the other characteristics which don't. That being said, my personal opinion is the characteristics should increase over time.
Well, they sort of do. They do have this Force ranking, like rating system.
They have the Force rating, but it's like you said, it makes it too arbitrary. It's just you're rank 1 now, so you get X amount of dice to roll, so you can do this. That's not how the Force works. The Force is just part of you. The Force ranking should more be to show how much in touch with the Force you are, than it is just, okay, you're a Force rank 1, which means you can use this spell, this spell, this spell, and this spell. You should be able to use a highly complex Force power, like 4C, and still be level 1. It will just be very hard. If you were doing that in these current rules, it's physically impossible. You have only 1 dice, and you're trying to do something that requires a lot of control, a lot of magnitude, a lot of range, a lot of strength, which you have to put a lot of points into to get to it. So, yeah, like you said, a lot of times in the movies, the Padawan says, I can't do it. But the Master says, you just need to believe. So it comes down to willpower or sense as much as anything else. So your characteristics is more of a guide to that. If that makes sense.
I'm not sure completely what I'm going to do yet. As I said, there's a lot of...
Yeah.
The Force has nuances and the rules don't. That's, I think, the big thing.
It's going to be a lot of fiddling, and there's a lot of... it's a work in progress.
Yes, definitely.
We just want to throw some ideas out there and get it going. But essentially, the main goal is to, like you said, streamline, but overhaul in the sense that we need to make the Force innate. It needs to be something that you don't think about when you're using it. You just use it. You don't have to think about when you're leveling up, you just level up. We can't make it so easy that you can just heal when you're a warrior. If you took the class that is a duelist or someone who doesn't use healing,
yes,
it wouldn't be something that you would use. It wouldn't be a skill that you'd possess. If that makes sense.
Yeah, well, they do sort of talk about the will of the Force and that you're chosen sometimes, which... So, yeah, I mean, if you've decided to be a combat-orientated Jedi, then you probably wouldn't take heal. You might even be able to. I haven't sat down and really read that through yet. It might only be available to certain classes and couldn't take the high combat sort of stuff either. So I have to look.
I'll look closely. Yeah, we need to look more at it. But so far, you do have to pick a different tree and go with that tree, which is incredibly annoying.
I mean, I'm still finishing off the Edge of the Empire. I'm nearly at the end of it now. I mean, give me a break. They're 440 pages each one. That's a lot of... They're fantastic, but good God, there's a lot of stuff to work through on each one.
Yeah. That's why the beginning bosses are good. So, yeah. A lot of think about it, a lot of work to be done to it. We'll definitely post more to try and explain our thoughts on this. As you can see from this upload, it was very complicated. You see our problems, you see our issues, and it's... if anyone's got any ideas...
Yeah, man. Hey, if you love the rules as it is, or if you're doing your own house rules for the Force, put them in the comments below. Tell us about it.
Yeah, Facebook, subscribe, all the usual channels that we do. Ideas. For me personally, as Scuzball, this is really where I find home. I guess we should have noticed at the start. We like this. Ghost has been RPing for countless many years, and I've done game design. Studied in it and dabbled in it. So this is something that we find easy and natural, and we want to improve it, make the best we can, and it's not something to be done in a few days or overnight with a couple of people. It's something that would be collective. The team that made these books would have been a large team. There would have been a few designers in it figuring out the rules. And it's not always perfect. So we hope that you can come in on board and help us make this, tweak it so it can be the best game in the world, in the universe.
In the galaxy.
In the galaxy. Well, thank you anyways for listening up. And we hope that you enjoyed our ramble and rant. We will do more updates as we figure out more on this, and stay tuned for our games. This is Scuzball. That is Ghost, being ghostly as usual. Signing off. Adios, amigos.
Please tell me that was good.